A 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1. People of the world, hello and welcome to Marketing as a Foreign Language, episode 222. Did you know that anyone with a Buddha in the background is fine by me? David Somerfleck, our guest today, 20 years of experience, developed a nonprofit. He's done the agency thing. He's done the consulting thing. He's been up, down, left, and right, everywhere possible on the marketing front, and he just so happens to have some pretty cool shades. Welcome to the show, Mr. Somerfleck.
Thank you for having me.
So I used to host something called Entrepreneurs Assembly where people would come in, and there was a lot of folks who would put their hands like this. They put their arms, they fold their arms, and then they would stare at me for a while. And I'm like, dude, this is a nonprofit. Like, why are you so resistant to any help at all? I'm not getting paid. I'm literally spending $35 to buy like croissants and coffee and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I'm losing money here. And I'm just trying to help entrepreneurs get to the next level. And these guys would be like, I don't want to share my idea. Like, then why are you here if you're not even willing to talk about it? Have you ever had that experience with people who are like, no, my idea is too perfect. I can't tell you.
Yeah, definitely. I've had that experience multiple times in multiple capacities. When I was a small business mentor for some nonprofit organizations, you'd run into that. You also see this question posted on a regular daily basis online on small business forums. It's not at all uncommon. It basically stems from really essentially being uninformed. And if it's not a matter of fault or blame, it just means they're really just not very experienced in business. So they don't really understand what concepts are new, what concepts are not, what's already been tested, and so on. You amongst web developers, web designers, digital marketers, there's certain catchphrases that you hear all the time where they say, I have an idea for the next Google, but I have no money, or I have an idea for the next Facebook and I want to test it first. So, all of these types of things, the odds are that whatever the small business owner, the nonprofit founder, whatever their title is, the odds are very, very high that whatever they're thinking of doing or beginning to do, it's already been done. So I don't know if it was Aristotle who said that there's nothing new under the sun, but it was one of the great philosophers. So the point is, whatever it is you're doing, it's already been done, most likely than not. Before Facebook came around, we had online forums. It just wasn't the same format. Before Google, we had search engines. It just wasn't, they weren't made as well.
That's right.
Or with enough financial backing. So the ideas have all been pretty much done, but the thing is to execute it in a more professional, more robust, or somehow different way, or serve an underserved group, or appeal to a niche market to make it unique. And that's the thing. So if somebody says, oh, my idea is so brilliant, I don't want to share it with you or tell you about it, that's fine. Keep it to yourself.
Yeah, it's really that simple. It was somewhat obnoxious.
Right. 99% of the time, you'll never see them or hear from them after 2 to 3 years. They'll be gone. Statistically, 95 to 99% of all businesses dry up within the first 3 years, I think it was, according to the SBA, the Small Business Administration.
Wow.
And now with COVID, the odds are probably, I would guess, much, much higher than that. And the numbers statistically are higher for restaurants.
Oh, goodness gracious.
So, the odds against a small business actually making real financial traction, real revenue, and lasting beyond the 5-year mark are slim to none. The other irony on the flip side of that is that the businesses that need our help the most are, the ones that are really struggling, that are likely to be gone within that 5-year mark, are the least likely to work with you, because they either don't have money, they don't want to spend it, or they're trying to do everything themselves, which I'm sure anyone in marketing sees that on a
Mhm.
regular basis. I call it the savior complex,
Mm.
where they want to do everything by themselves for free.
Mm.
Usually, I'm an animal lover, and a long time ago, we adopted a new rabbit. And I remember going to a shelter, and I said to the woman, I love your shelter. I love what it does. I'm a web developer, digital marketer. I could easily create a, responsive website for your shelter that would work well on this blue phone and use e-commerce to take payments and help you do video commercials, on and on. She
Mhm.
said, boy, I'd love to do that. But she said, I got to be in control of everything, and it's got to be completely free or I just can't do it too.
Mhm.
And I just said, well, it's sad, but all these little animals that you can't place in homes are the ones suffering because you literally have more than you know what to do with. How many are going to die or be, put to
Mm.
sleep because they can't find homes? So it's your ego. So the ego is the enemy. And that's why I always have that poster in the background to try to keep me reminded of that.
Mm. Let's dive into that. So when
Sure.
you say the ego is the enemy, what precisely do you mean by that?
Well, what's the ego? The ego is I want to be in charge. It's not right. I shouldn't have to. Why is my Wix or Weebly or Squarespace or whatever the free DIY template generator of the day is, why is it not making me $1 million overnight? It's the ego. And you see that with many, many business owners, whether, in fact, I would say most business owners, whether they're new and struggling or established, you see the ego getting in their way, and where that's why if you're in marketing, you have to screen first, you then onboard secondly.
Mm.
Whereas most new business owners or entrepreneurs, what do they want? How much? Right? How much? As if you're buying, a cheeseburger or something at McDonald's. Maybe intellectually they understand that you're participating in a process
Right.
that goes on. Marketing is a process.
Mhm.
Maybe intellectually they'll tell you they understand that, but it's very common to get the call. How much is SEO? How much is a website? How much is this? How much is that? Like you're that old Chris Rock joke. How much is one chicken nugget? You know, that's part of that is being uninformed and inexperienced, but also part of that is the ego to pause and really try to understand what it is that you say you want to do. Take a step back, just slow the F down. So, when I say ego, I basically mean ego, and, that's the id, the ego, whatever you want to call it, getting in your way of you being able to help yourself.
Mm.
99.9% of the time, if you can't work with someone and you can't help a business grow faster, it's because they're getting in their own way. If you watch all these fix your business reality TV shows, some of which I like, some of which I don't, but the you see that theme repeated over and over and over again. You have to break them down before you can build them up. You have to yell at them to get them to shut up and listen to you.
Mhm.
You have to review in great detail. How are you suffering? What are the pains that you're experiencing? And you see that expression in marketing all the time about pain points. So you have to review with them. What are your pain points? How is the business bleeding money? How much debt are you carrying on the books? What goals do you have? Can we get specific about these goals? What have you done so far to try to reach these goals yourself, by yourself?
Mhm.
So you have to go through all of that before you can help them.
Mm. Yeah. So do you find yourself in those situations? Do you consult like that where you go into
Oh, yeah,
businesses that are dying and have those moments
sure.
with them?
With freelancers who are dying too.
Mm.
And that's even worse because my heart goes out to a lot of them and I feel for them. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no better feeling than taking a business that is, on the verge of filing for bankruptcy, and saying, as a result of me stepping in, and again, this is ego too, but in a good way. So the ego doesn't necessarily have to be bad, but where you step in and you say, hey, as a result of my efforts, I was able to maybe turn this business around so they're not bleeding money. They're beginning to increase profitability in a gradual, realistic way. That's a great, great feeling. And you earned a respectable wage in the process.
Hmm.
I think that's a great place to be, not just for them, but for yourself as well as the marketer. In my case, the digital marketer. If I work with someone like a freelancer who wants coaching, that's actually even more hands-on, because again, I have to break down, what have you tried to do yourself so far for free? How did that work? You already know the answer. It's not going so well. You got to break through these walls, the resistance they have, because in reality, look, you could just go and read 30 books,
Mm-hmm.
and you could go and toil and volunteer for 10 years or so and get the experience, maybe less, maybe more, who knows. But in most cases, they have to get out of their own way. You have to make them see the ego. When you train rabbits, just to use that as a metaphor, you have to litter box train them, right? One
Mm-hmm.
of the things that you do is you literally put their paws in the litter box and you move it like this. This is where you're supposed to go. This is where you're supposed to dig. And you put their little faces, not in a harsh or painful way, but you move their faces so they smell their own excrement. Now, you don't do it in a mean way. You're not being, hurting them in any way. It's just, gentle and everything. But the reason you're doing that is so something triggers in the head. Hey, I smell my own excrement. I get it. This is the place I go where I want to make more of this. Right.
Jeez.
Right. So with the business owner, you got to get them to smell that. And it's the truth. They have to recognize their own failures and own it. And when you do that, it's real. That's when all the BS stops, all the magical guru hype, all the pabulum and nonsense, and all the hot air and, puffing up your chest and everything. All that stops when you can get them to own their failure. And now, see, now that we have acknowledged that and we can identify the cause of it and that we don't like it, now we can come up with plans to try to turn it around. The plans aren't magical, but usually if you stick to a process that's been tested, it will work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you have to go through, whether it's the freelancer who's struggling to earn a living or the business owner who's struggling to take care of a family. You'd be
Mm-hmm.
amazed how many business owners I talk to. And I ask them very simply, is this a hobby that you do for shits and giggles? Or is this something where you're trying to take care of a family and pay the rent or the mortgage?
Mm.
It's not a complicated answer. But if you ask people that, you'd be amazed how many people do not want to tell you.
Why wouldn't they want to tell you?
I think in some cases they don't know themselves. I think in some cases it's the get real point,
Mm.
where it's a matter of, okay, all right, you found me out. We need to acknowledge these failures. We need to acknowledge these shortcomings. No, we really don't have plans for marketing, or we really don't know what we're doing. Or, we have champagne desires and a beer budget or no budget at all. And,
Mm.
I work with clients who come with this ego around them, and you have to walk them through this process. And it's very, very seldom that you find a business that doesn't have that on some level.
Mm.
For larger enterprise businesses where we're talking 50 or more employees, this is often the same thing, but it's so compartmentalized. It's more about disorganization, and the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. I've had enterprise organizations contact me over the course of years I mean, years of back and forth communication where they want to know this or see this case study or ask you this question and they want to price this around and then that around. And maybe they'll get back to you a year or two from now or whatever. And you've got to be able to cut through that.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of extemporaneous that you have to cut through in order to be able to do your job in the manner in which you know that has a greater likelihood of delivering results.
Wow. So when you were growing up, did you have teachers in your life, in your family? Was there entrepreneurship? Was there anything in your childhood that you could directly correlate to what you're doing now?
Oh, absolutely. My mother was an English teacher.
Yeah, I thought so. I was picking up on a little bit of that.
And why do you say that?
Well, because when an excellent teacher navigates a classroom, they do precisely what you mentioned, which is
Right.
identify problems and then soberly work through them on a
Right.
process that
There's so
has,
much to unpack there. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. But yes, my mother was an English teacher, and I learned from her an awful lot. I mean, I gained an enormous amount of respect for knowledge, specialized expertise, the importance of structure, which I had to learn and relearn. And that's a whole other topic altogether. So, yeah, I learned an awful lot from her about that. And, you know, when we get back to the screening and onboarding that you just mentioned there, I remember when I would work for marketing agencies, and then the contract would expire, or they didn't have enough contracts and they'd have to let you go or whatever. Then you're back to freelancing. You do that for a year or two, then you go back to the agency and so on. And one of the things I learned freelancing, or for that matter, working for the agency, was to always have an ace up your sleeve, always have a shank in your shoe, as they say. Never count on one source for your income in any way. And I started out in education as a substitute teacher. I would work whenever, in between agency positions during freelancing to because I wanted money to put into blue chips or whatever. So you would do that. And I learned very quickly that even if you were substituting for, let's say, first grade, right, should be really easy, should be really fun. They would run around like chickens with their heads cut off. They used to call them chainsaws with legs. Okay. You'd have to sit down with them and say, what are the rules that we have in this classroom? And go around the room one by one and talk to them. Johnny's going to hold this cup. So now only Johnny can talk. Then Susie holds the cup. Only Susie can talk. And you go around and you introduce the concepts of boundaries, rules, limitations for conduct, what's acceptable behavior, what's not acceptable behavior. And when you work with business owners, or for that matter, when business owners train their own staff or work with digital marketers, both parties should be discussing what are the rules of engagement, what are the boundaries, rules, and limitations, how do we do things, lay the groundwork. So you have to have the screening first and then the onboarding. And if you don't, it's usually because you're working at an agency, part of a much larger ecosystem where you have others doing that for you. And if you're working solo or your own agency and you don't have that structure, you will pay a heavy price.
We often at my agency talk about scope creep.
Oh, absolutely. It's horrible. And I don't know if your audience knows about scope creep.
Perhaps you can tell.
I would hope so.
I would hope so
would
too.
hope so.
Yeah, but you never know.
Scope creep is basically when projects are out of control. In order for the digital marketing agency to make money, or the digital marketer in my case to make money, to earn any kind of profit. You have to work in a very organized, deliberate, structured manner. If a project takes too long, then now I have to turn down other projects. I can't work as efficiently as I could have otherwise. It screws up your timetable. It's like the mechanic taking 5 days to do an oil change. He's going to have a big, long backlog waiting for him. So you have to work in a very orderly manner, or your business just won't work very well. So that's scope creep. And I would run into that not working for agencies because I didn't encounter it. I would be a part of the team. They do the web design, do the SEO, set up the e-commerce, or do the proofreading, or whatever, do the link checking, whatever it is, whatever that the team needs you to do at that time, until I was a project manager. Then I'm, organizing it. So it's very different. But I learned as a freelancer to apply the structure that I learned from the agency to myself as the individual. And if I didn't do that, then I would pay, really. You'd pay literally in lost wages, or projects just going on forever. Every web developer will tell you horror stories about, the website that took 6 months to build out that they could have gotten done in one. I've heard of websites taking years to build out. I've seen giant corporate websites that looked absolutely atrocious, and were just filled with all kinds of errors and glitches in them and everything, because nobody knew what the left, what was, just chaos.
That's right. And I've learned that you can be very clear in the contract about when they have to deliver on X, Y, and Z, and they'll still blow it. I don't care.
They don't read it. That's the thing. So, and I'm not saying everybody, there's some people who do, of course, but, and then again, that's how I had to learn. Because when you have a few things that go south, you learn, okay, before we can begin on the project, part of the onboarding process is to record myself going over the contract with you. So then when we talk, you can say, well, I never said that. And I'll say, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith. You did, actually. I have that saved in my Dropbox account. Let me go ahead and show you the video or the audio where you said this. And we went over the contract. You said that you understood, you agree. Now I can show you your signature that's admissible in court, or the electronic signature that's probably just as admissible in most courts. Now can we proceed? They could legitimately not know, or they don't read the contract. Who is time? I get that. But that's, you have your screening processes and your onboarding processes, and you test them. Purposely get somebody who just wants to be a bull in a china shop, and get them to test your processes out, 5 or 6 times. Then it's ready to be live. And I'm not saying my process is flawless. It's not. There's still some people who get past the velvet rope, but nowhere near as many as before. It's kind of like COVID.
Right. The scalability of the process.
Right. Yeah. I actually have a workbook that I give to new clients, and I ask them to read. I assume that they don't read it, and then I go over it with them when we talk again. And I also offer it for sale on my own site. And the workbook just goes over things that you and I already know, and they may know, but in most cases they don't know to the depth that we do. They've heard of SEO, but most business owners don't really know how it works or what it's for. They think it's some, esoteric kind of thing. We all use these things here to do our shopping and order food and do our banking. But how many business owners really understand that your website needs to work the same way on this as it needs to on a big widescreen PC?
It should work better.
Right, exactly. And that's what responsive design is. So I learned from experience, rather than to keep repeating these things, about how budgets work and design decisions and what is SEO, how does that work, how much is this, and on and how long does a project take, how are, all of these things. Just put it together in one freaking workbook, offer it for sale at a very reasonable price, sell it to people or give it to them for free rather when you do paid discovery, have that part of the, step by step by step. If they don't want to go through that journey with you, and really what I should say is they can't, maybe, emotionally or intellectually or physically, whatever the reason is, they can't go through that journey.
Mm-hmm.
They're conditioned to everything be Burger King. I want it my way. I want it immediate. People get into this whole consumer commoditization thing. So you got to walk them through that journey, or it's just not going to work. You can't help them. And
Yeah.
that may be the definition of marketing as a foreign language.
You know what? There's a lot of acronyms. Understanding the soul of marketing it requires it to be your livelihood. If you really want to get fluent in it, you have to live it. It is a foreign language, and it's the sticking point I find for almost every business. Well, at least the ones I talk to, and obviously, in marketing, that's going to be the sticking point. But everything else is pretty easy. I mean,
it is.
You got plumbing problems, fix the pipe. You're a doctor, do what you do. But the marketing bit, man, it's people don't understand. It's the vocal box. It's the
it goes right back to the ego. It goes right back to that. I remember when I had to have a root canal. If you've never had a root canal, let me tell you, it's a journey into pain. And I had to have a root canal done, and I was going to a dentist who was just out of medical or dental school. He was a really young guy. I was really, really important to me that I wanted to see the best dentist I could find in the area. So he was a young, tough, guy, really just as sweet as he could be. And I remember saying to him, let me see here. I said, I got to ask you a question. Have you ever had anybody come to you and, use these things on their teeth or paper clips or staples or super glue or whatever? And he said, oh yeah. He said, it's actually more common than you think. And I said, no, come on, get out of here. He said, yeah, I have. And he told me the reasons and, how much more expensive it would be, the tens of thousands of dollars it would cost to, get rid of the infection and do corrective surgery and on and on and on and all that. And I found that the don't DIY syndrome, the whole savior syndrome that I was talking about before, is so common in other industries. You have to be able to put aside the ego and say, if I want to really fix my plumbing, I need a plumber. If I really want to fix my car, I need a mechanic. If I really want to get rid of the floaters in my eye, I need to see an ophthalmologist who knows what the F he's doing. If I want a website, could you go build your own? Sure, you could. There's a million different ways. But if you want to use the website to attract more customers over time and also not have that drop off after a few months, but actually have it exponentially grow a business, you got to work with a professional who knows what they're doing and is willing to set aside the time for you month in and month out to ensure that this happens. Someone you can work with hand in glove. So you get out of your own way and you let an expert be an expert.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And that's the ego. You can teach yourself yoga, but it's better if you go to a yoga instructor,
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. And the motivation to do it as well. I don't think people realize how you can blog. You go ahead, blog, but talk to me in 6 months about how your blog's going. Right. A month, 2 months, 3 months. You're doing your Facebook posts. It's all hot and heavy first month, 2 months, but then you realize it's a slog because you've already said that before, and you've said that before too. So now what are you going to do? Right? You've run out of ideas. Now what?
Right. Yeah. It takes time. I mean, there's like a famous blog post I read about blogging, of course. And I remember seeing this blog post, and it was how I got like 2 million readers blogging. And he said that he blogged every day. He also repurposed the content, which is a marketing concept that blows people's heads who are new to marketing. The whole concept of repurposing content. But he was saying how every day he would write a new blog post, he would do an accompanying video, he would do an accompanying podcast, he would do an accompanying infographic image. And he would do this every day for 2 years straight.
Yeah.
And he would send the image to Pinterest. The blog post, he would send all the social media outlets. The podcast would go circulate. The video would go to YouTube and Daily Motion and whatever else. But he said he didn't get anywhere with it. And he was getting depressed. And at the 2-year mark, his traffic just started to really take off. By then, he probably had so many backlinks and so many other mentions and other sites and on, that he became an authority in his very technical area. And so now he's getting all this attention. But it took him 2 years to do it. How many people can do that every day for 2 years? I mean, if you're honest, you're supposed to have a business of your own to run. You're the dentist, the lawyer, the doctor, the baker, the widget maker, whatever. You have a business to run. I just have one life to live. I don't have time to do all that mess every day. I do have time to do it once a month, maybe once a week. But, so you have to have help. The more goals that you want to achieve, the more help you're going to need, the more real they are to you in terms of pain and really wanting to achieve specific objectives, the more specialized help you're going to need. I mean, I tried working out on myself to try to put on some weight and everything. And every time I try to do it, I screw it up somehow. I pull something or, I overdo it. And, I tried the resistance bands and that was great. And then like a day later, I pull something right here. And I'm like, oh, what did I do? Well, you're not Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You don't know, how to build this. You don't know what you're supposed to do. You're just some guy doing what you think you're supposed, whatever feels right, So you end up getting whatever it is you get.
Yeah. So 11:03. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for our amazing guest, David Somerfleck, today. However, I do want to say that it's been a joy. It's been a lot of fun. Typically, what we do on the show, David, is we go back into your past and we sort of start a chronology, and then we want you back on the show, and then we just continue that chronology. But the conversation was so good, I just gave it the English teacher. That was enough, right? Your mom was an English teacher. We touched a little bit on that. But when we have you back, what we would like to do is do more diving into your childhood, how that relates to where you got now. And then ultimately, we want this to be a series, right? So we want people
I would love that. And that brings back the whole ego full circle, really. Because it's at some point, we're all products of that, I believe.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that you get the final word. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, youtube.com/Send It Rising is where you can watch the live show. You can join us and listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, and all the other podcast platforms that we are currently on. Also, the Facebook page for Send It Rising. You can watch the live feed there. Join us. You can chat, ask questions to the guests on the live show. We would love to hear you there. Just go to youtube.com again /Send It Rising, which is the name of my advertising agency. Want to make sure that we give David the final word. David.
My final word is to paraphrase Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau, the author of Walden, which to me is actually a good business book, although it's not seen that way. But there's a quote that he has that I'm very fond of, where he says, "Build your castles in the air, for that is where they belong. Now put your foundation beneath it." And I think that's a really, really good quote for business owners as well as for marketers.
Love it. All right, David, we genuinely appreciate having you on the show. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.